Okay, hi everyone. So I'm SmithyQ, and I forgot what number this is, but this is the next installment in opening traps and opening principles. And we're now doing a deep dive. The next few videos are all going to be covering different positions from here in the Italian game, because there's a number of very rich positions, and there's a certain number of traps. And again, I would really like to highlight how most of these traps can simply be navigated by following our opening principles. Today, we're going to look at mainly the position after f5, the so-called Rouseau Gambit, which can be very tricky for white. Before we get into that, though, I want to very quickly look at this. This is going to help illustrate something that we're going to come see in the Rouseau Gambit line. I don't know if this has a name. Maybe it's called like the Four Knights Italian or something. But we can see that white has simply made all the four most natural moves in the world. And it's fully possible for black to just copy suit and play bishop c5 and get a, I think it's the Giocco Pianissimo, if my Italian is not butchering it. But there's a very standard and common tactical theming here, and that's to take on e4. Because after the recapture, we can see that the white pieces are perfectly lined up for a pawn fork, boom, and black has got the perfect center. And a lot of people do not understand how important this is. If you've taken my opening principles course, you know that the center is extremely strong, especially when you get the two pawns there and they can march forward. And that's what you've got here. You've got the two pawns. But just beyond that, look, you've got easy development for your two remaining bishops. You got complete control of the center. You're going to castle very easily. Whereas white has lost his pawn in the center, and it's going to take time to get that piece into the game. So even though after, for example, bishop d3, take and take, material is equal, so it's not one of those losing type traps like the other ones we've covered so far, black actually has the better position. And again, I can prove that if I show on the stats. You can see here that black wins more often than white, unless he gets crazy and plays f5. But if he plays normal moves, black's position is easier to play, and that shows in practice. So I really want you to highlight this, how black is temporarily sacrificing a piece, but he wins it back with this d5 move, and he gets the better game for it. Certainly the easier game. So why is that relevant? Let's look at this, the Rouseau Gambit. This has been popularized by one of my favorite chess teachers, GM Igor Smirnov. He's shown a whole bunch of traps. You can look at his videos if you want to see all of them in detail. It's actually a very tricky position for white. And again, I think the stats will bear that out. If you look at this, we can see here that white has two good moves, where white scores better than black, and then a whole bunch of moves that are much worse. And overall, black is winning more games than white. And the reason for this is that you could sort of say the two most natural moves are taking the pawn or developing a piece aren't very good. And I want to start with this one, because so far in this series, I've been really highlighting how you don't want to take pawns. That's bad. If you just develop your pieces, things are good. And hopefully you can see after take and then the recapture why that's not the case here. Well, it's d5. It's identical. It's the exact same thing, but black didn't have to sacrifice a piece. In fact, black is literally winning a piece now with this. And that means after knight c3, you actually can't defend the pawn, which means you're just down a pawn, d5 is going to come, and you're in a terrible position. Absolutely terrible. So in this position, you can't just do regular development. And I want to highlight that because as much as I would like to say that just develop and everything is going to be fine, chess, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, is deeper and more rich than that. But at the same time, hopefully you can calculate knight c3 takes, your tactical radar should be absolutely zinging that you've got pieces like this, you have no control of the center, and d5 is coming. Before we get into the correct moves, let's look at The second most common move, e takes f5. And again, if we were to step back and we were to ask, why does this trap work? Or what makes this line so good? It's because in both cases, after knight c3, take, what's happened? White's lost control of the center. And the center is one of the most important things. There's only three things we have to worry about in the opening. Develop our pieces, control the center, and castle, getting our king safe. We can see here that White's been doing great with the developing part, but he's losing control of the center, and of course he's losing a piece. That's not very good. It's the same thing. If White were to take, he's up a pawn, great for White, but he's lost complete control of the center. We've got d5 is going to come. More importantly, e4 is coming, hitting the knight, and the knight doesn't have a great square. Look, those squares are already covered. The queen controls these squares. And so the knight is either going to jump all the way back, and then look at this. Here comes d5. Black wins back his pawn, complete control of the center, and this is absolutely terrible for White. Or White can try and pin the pawn. And then after queen goes to e7, again, just look at these stats. Look at how terrible it is for White. Everything is exactly the same as before. The knight has to, again, all these other squares are completely covered. And after the retreat, there's this absolutely incredible trap. Let's just follow the most common moves. Knight f6, d3, trying to get rid of that pawn. And again, you can see this here. Knight comes to d4, hits the queen. It's also hitting this square. We move the queen somewhere. Take. Opens up a check. But you know what's even better? Knight takes c2. It's a fork. And if you recapture, oh, look at this. Discovered check. Pawn is protecting. So you can't even block with your queen, right? Because you're just going to lose it this way. And that's game. And again, why this happened? Well, I think this position shows it quite clearly. For one, Black is actually ahead in development, and Black has control of the center. White simply completely gave it away. So, if we know now, this is what White, this is the danger facing White, is that it's very easy to play knight c3 or to play e takes f5 and let Black's center just run you over. So what should we do instead? So far, I've been really focusing on the development aspect. You want to develop your pieces and life is good. There's, of course, the second main task of the opening, and that's to control the center. And so again, if we look at those stats, what are the two best moves? d3 and d4. Why are these good? It's because they're fighting back and they're controlling the center. Let's look at d3. This is probably really, really simple. We could just even follow the main line for a second. And look at this. Do you see how the stats are suddenly in White's favor? Because White is controlling the center, right? Or at the very least, White is not giving it up. But also, we're highlighting the downside of f5 is it's weakening the Black king. And in fact, this position that we're looking at is almost like a king's gambit in reverse. In fact, it is a king's gambit in reverse after knight to f6, where it's been simply declined. And if we were to just follow the most common moves here, castle, oh, Black would love to castle, but he can't. Let's just do a couple more. Bishop takes, b takes, f takes e4, d takes e4, and then now it's Black's chance to get greedy because he sees this pawn as weak. But if you were to grab it, aha, queen goes to d5, hits, threatens mate, all because of that weakened diagonal. Not really, I suppose, but that's not very good. Even if Black were to try and come back here, knight to d6, he's just being run over. And the main problem is that, well, let's look at this. Knight takes e5. We've got open center eyeing at him, open diagonals, and he can't castle. He would love to castle, but oh, he's losing because of that open diagonal. Right? Now, of course, none of this is forced in any respect. I'm not trying to claim that this is just completely refuted. But you can see how White controlling the center just let his play naturally follow, and there were no real traps there. And so this is what I wanted to highlight, is that yes, developing is good, but controlling the center is also good. And in fact, GM Oleksienko, if I'm saying his name correctly, in his opening course, he actually says that controlling the center is the most important principle. So that is, it's control the center, then develop, and then castle. Those are your priorities. And it's a trap like this, or an opening variation like this, that really shows how important it is to control the center. Because taking is bad, knight c3 is probably just losing, but playing d3 or d4, the moves that challenge the center, that try and keep that, they don't just keep white in the game, they likely give white a really good game. And so we're going to be seeing that in the next few variations, that they're going to be more mainline Italians, if you will. We're going to see how, yes, we're trying to still focus on development, but we're also going to see much more of a focus on the center, because that is where it's really, really important. I think that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed this little dive. We got several more videos on the Italian to come. Let me know, comments, feedback, if you like this format, if there's other variations, other traps you'd like to see. Otherwise, that's that. I'm Smithy Q. Do the standard YouTube stuff. It really helps the channel out. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.